I think a general idea is that we talked about not reinventing the wheel, but perhaps decorating the wheel in a new way for our own choruses. We have an amazing resource here in the collective group of conductors in the room, amazing history, and to please be in contact with individual conductors or GALA 411 if you have any questions, because we as a group are a very powerful resource.
We've covered such a broad range of topics, but I think the thing that sticks in my mind the most has to do with structure or lack thereof, and membership issues around code of conduct and how to deal with that. So in terms of the code of conduct issue, what I'd like to say to people who weren't here is, in the middle of the crisis is not the time to be writing your code of conduct. You really need to have thought this through and have all of this structure for dealing with the need to intervene at any level of the organization, membership, board, staff, before something happens that needs to be addressed. And there are many ways to do this, but you do have to have the structure. There are ways that you need a grievance policy and procedure. You need to have conflict of interest statements for your board and your staff, and a clear code of conduct for your membership. What are the basic non-negotiables when it comes to being a member of this organization? And these might be things like no intoxication at rehearsals or performances. And I think, honestly, with the social media age that we live in, we need to have some guidelines about appropriate communication between each other, publicly on Facebook, Twitter, email, those kinds of things. But if you have all of this clearly spelled out in policies and then educate your different components, you have a lot greater chance of A, preventing the problem, and then B, dealing with it when it comes up, because we're human and it's going to come up. Making sure that you have the infrastructure in place, which kind of plays off what I just said about being prepared for a crisis. But we do recreate the wheel over and over again because we never write anything down, and if we do, it goes in some notebook somewhere and it's never seen or heard from again. So anything that we can do to establish how the business is going to operate will enhance your ability to take more and more steps forward. And it is things like writing down rules and regulations, and then more importantly than that, following what you say you're going to do. Making sure that you're following your bylaws, that structure is there. If you have your bylaws relatively simple and your policies and procedures separated from that, then you may go back and change the policies and procedures more easily than if it's all tied in within your bylaws. You want to kind of try to separate out the big picture from the minutia.
Well, one topic that came up was about income, money. Plain and simple. Where's the money coming from? Earned income through ticket sales. We talk about trends that we're seeing within our individual choruses in terms of ticket sales. How did our holiday shows do? Are we seeing any common themes or trends in terms of sales? We talk about subscribers. Do we have season subscriptions? If we do, how is that performing for us? And I think it's helpful because I think you realize that if my holiday show did not meet numbers like we had planned, well, that seemed to be a common theme that was occurring in the room. And we just talked through that as far as what worked, what didn't work, and then what do we have planned, for the rest of the season. Likewise with contributed income, talking about, updates on what we're doing to raise money with our donors, from the simple phone calls, lunches, letters, to more targeted mailings, to events like breakfasts. We talked about different fundraising models and what works and what doesn't work. And it's nice, keeping with the not to reinvent the wheel theme, it's just sharing what we learn, what we've done, what worked, what hasn't worked, And each time we get together, we continue to revisit those topics and add to those topics and learn more. So if I might come in and talk about something that I tried this year for a fundraiser that one of the other larger choruses talked about doing before and how that works. So it's very helpful. So income, just where's the money coming from? That was a big thing on our mind. And I think also the one thing we were talking about as well was the care and feeding of staff. As our organizations continue to grow, not only in terms of the age of the organization, but the size and complexity of the organization. As you continue to do more and define what your mission is beyond performances and getting out into the community, and what do you want to be when you grow up? What does this organization want to be? And is all of your leadership ready to take on that role? And is all of your leadership not necessarily being properly rewarded, but acknowledged for the work that they're doing, that they're getting the resources that they need and the support that they need to get their work done?
Have to have the tools, don't you?
You do. Mm-hmm. You absolutely do. And knowing what those tools are, mm-hmm. and the realization that sometimes those tools are right there. And they're sometimes you got to ask around the room or ask within the chorus, who's got the talent, who has the wherewithal, and generally the resources are right there. But you're right, you do have to identify what those tools are and put them to work.
We certainly, in the artistic directors, had a lengthy discussion about that, and
About what?
about conflicts between the artistic directors and the board. And we quickly steered that toward, we were not trying to assign blame for that, but how do we all positively work forward to have better relationships? And some of the key things that came up in our discussion was that we found that a lot of choruses didn't have defined opportunities for communication. They didn't have clearly defined expectations of artistic directors and ways to periodically and systematically inform them of how they were meeting or not meeting those expectations. And so some directors felt they had been surprised by an appointment with the board and didn't understand the issues. So we really talked about opening up better communication, having clear avenues for feedback from your chorus and your board, and just creating a better, more holistic and healthy atmosphere inside the entire organization so that we're all part of a team and getting rid of the us and them mentality.
I'd like to piggyback on that. I think sometimes the artistic product overshadows and outgrows the board development. And when that happens, there's a tilt in a perceived, and I would like to emphasize the word perceived, power shift. If the artistic product is driving the actions of the board, then there's a setup there for resentment on part of board members and resentment on the part of the artistic director as well. Again, I love to go back to structure. Most mid-size and smaller choruses do not have any structure in place to appropriately evaluate their artistic director and also to evaluate individual board members and board functioning as a whole. So it's not okay to do one without the other. We don't evaluate our staff when we're not evaluating ourselves as well. So I think that's kind of a little black hole area. And unfortunately, if it becomes us against them with a board and an artistic director, soon follows the chorus against the board, and then that is a very terrible place to put your organization. So a lot pre-planning, putting things in place before there's an issue, keeping those lines of communication open between artistic director and board is so important. And I will say that I think as a tendency toward boards to want to to do the artistic director's job. We really need to hire the correct person in the price range that we can afford, set the parameters of what their job is, and then leave them alone and let them do their job. And if there are problems, then you go back and appropriately have communication and intervention about the problems, and you work together on writing goals and writing plans to make things better. It's not okay to waylay anyone at the last minute about issues that have been brewing for a year. It's a very unkind way to treat each other, don't you think?
Yes. I mean, it gets down to communication. You know, I mean, we, the executive directors group, we talked about this as well, you know, about the relationships between artistic directors and the board of directors, the executive directors with the board of the directors, the AD and the ED as well. And how I feel that GALA can help with this is, you know, we have the resources here. You come to one of these conferences, and first of all, you're just going to meet people who've gone through it themselves. And you know, there's plenty of people here who can advise you on how to set up the proper communication structure. Because so many stories that I would hear of how things would turn out, you know, like a conflict between an artistic director and the board of directors was usually the result of no communication ahead of time. If you're open with each other, if you have those processes in place, if your artistic director has clear goals identified and defined that everyone agrees to, and you've got the process of following up and staying in communication with each other, you know, not to say that there will never be conflict or issues that come up farther down the line, but so many things can be averted just by proper communication and proper management of the relationship. And you're going to find resources here that can help you, you know, walk you through that, talk you through that. You know, the GALA 411 program is another resource for you, whether with Eve at the board level, myself with on management, you know, Bob with the artistic director side. You know, we've been there. And
maybe some ways that GALA could help. You know, I know things are always in the planning process, but there may be some specific workshops. I know there are some evaluation tools on our website, but maybe some help in learning how to implement those tools, you know, efficiently. Maybe there's some things that we could do along that line as well.
Another thing that came up that I think is important to stress is we as artistic directors need to consistently understand that there is a balance of economics and art going on here. And perhaps spelling that out with some long-range planning of concerts, saying, for this concert, our goal is to achieve this level of artistry, and perhaps our worry is not so much the bottom line, but as a nod to the necessity of fulfilling the budget at the end of the year, we're going to program this concert that we know is going to contribute more to the bottom line. So always having the holistic formula in your mind and writing it down, understanding that maybe if it's not written down, when we use the word mission, what do we mean? Is it just sort of the idea of, oh, we have a lovely mission, or is it our actual mission? Get things in writing is always a good thing.
Yeah, it's a huge difference to lose money on a concert that you plan to lose money on, as opposed to losing money on something that you thought you were going to make $15,000, $20,000 profit on.
Exactly.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with planning programming that you know is not going to be financially sexy, because then you make up for it somewhere else. As a matter of fact, it's okay to do that to meet your mission.
I mean, there's this inherent conflict between artistry and community advocacy and what your mission is. And you have to be cognizant of that and aware of that, and, you know, plan your budgets, plan your programming with that inherent and it's a great conflict to have. I mean, it is a
great conflict, and I encourage artistic directors, instead of feeling like, I'm not getting the art I want, instead of embrace it as a great opportunity to make great art under the constraints of a budget or bringing in money. And so bring your creativity to the table, because if you're always creative and you're always upbeat, you're going to get more buy-in from your members, the board's going to be happier. just clarity and enthusiasm and a consistent, be in touch with the bottom line that we are providing salaries, we're feeding human hearts as well, but, you know, there is a budget that we
There is
have
a
to think
budget.
about.
There is.